On today's Apple Daily, a November event special. New wallpapers from Big Sur. Big Sur, what to expect. AirTags, Final Cut Pro, and our Apple Silicon ARM Mac predictions update.
This is the Apple Daily.
I'm David for Living on iPad, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you don't miss a thing. So in today's video, we are just deep diving right into what to expect at this month, because it's now November. This month's Apple event, the keynote that we have coming, we expect on November the 17th. We should know for sure by November the 10th. That is the date that we're expecting to have the announcement and invites going out to people everywhere. So, starting off with macOS Big Sur. This is the first not macOS 10 since macOS 10. Big Sur is the first macOS 11 generation. Now, we don't know if next year we're going to get macOS 12 and macOS 13 the year after that, or if we're going to go to 12.1, 12.2. Doesn't really matter, makes no actual difference, but I would be interested to see if Apple is going to just move on to doing whole number updates like they do with everything else. But what are we going to get from Big Sur? We have a brand new design language coming to the Mac, inspired by iOS and iPadOS. They said at WWDC that this is to help with consistency and for people to know where they are when they're working between different systems within the ecosystem, and that makes perfect sense. Everything has been refined from the radius of a corner to a unified icon set that's used across macOS and iOS. So all of those little icon glyphs that you see at the bottom rows of a lot of apps, that kind of stuff is coming to menu bars and all that sort of stuff within macOS Big Sur. Another big difference is it has been natively designed for light and dark modes from day one, rather than being forced upon the existing version of macOS that we had at the time, which already had all of its graphics in place. This is going to have custom graphics for both sides and colour schemes that work for everything. Oh, there are some new wallpapers as well. I just thought I'd throw them up here rather than just giving you my logo again, because that's changing too soon. Notification Center and widgets are combined into a single pane, and the other thing coming on that side of the screen is going to be Control Center. Every app's design has been updated, and many of those apps are based on a Catalyst version of an iPad app, so they're going to be really consistent with what you expect on iOS. So if you're coming to a Mac for the first time from an iPhone or an iPad, everything should be super familiar for you, and it shouldn't take any time to get used to the differences. And the other thing about macOS Big Sur is that it definitely looks like it has been optimized for touch, which might not be something that we see immediately, but by the time we're getting towards, I don't know, WWDC next year, certainly before the next version of macOS comes out, I'm pretty sure we will be seeing something with touchscreens, unless it's purely so that with Sidecar you can actually use touch on the iPads there as a screen for your macOS. But let me know, are you excited for Big Sur, or is that kind of a bit secondary to what's coming with Apple Silicon? Let me know in the comments. AirTags. So Jon Prosser has been keeping an eye on all of this stuff. Jon Prosser has got a really good record with the leaks. I think it's somewhere like 87-88% at the moment on Apple Track, which is like pretty phenomenal. There's only a couple of guys above him, but he is saying that AirTags are still on track for the November event. He's saying that the software to run them will be built into iOS 14.3, which I would think developers will be getting their hands on fairly soon, because it looks like 14.2 has gone to a gold master, I think. So we might get some software clues in the next week or so. We did a whole video on some of the extra stuff that AirTags can do. It was part of our live stream that we did for the first one, so check that out if you want. I will link it up there. Final Cut Pro coming to Apple Silicon and iPad. This is via Komiya on Twitter. Now, all he did, he said, new version of Final Cut Pro, and then another tweet immediately after it that said Apple Silicon and iPad, and that's kind of all we got. Now, I think we're all kind of expecting a version of Final Cut Pro to come to iPad, because with Apple Silicon, it's built on the same code base. There should be very little work, as Apple themselves have said, to port stuff over from x86 over to Apple Silicon for Mac software. If they can do that quickly, it must be super easy to port something that's going to run on the same chips but just with a different kind of operating system underneath it. I can't imagine that's going to be a huge job, although Windows and Mac have always been difficult, but then that's more about the APIs and the APIs match and stuff. So it should be a fairly simple job. Fingers crossed it's going to be on its way. Fingers crossed it's not going to be a $300 program anymore. I have a feeling maybe they might try and bring it down to somewhere around the $100 mark, or maybe less than that, maybe 50. Or could we see it as a subscription model like Adobe does with their Creative Cloud? Not my favourite option. However, if Apple was to do a Pro Apps bundle that they did as get all of our Pro Apps for the low monthly cost of X with Apple 2, because Apple 1 is going to be old hat by the time we get to the November event. Would you be interested in subscribing to Final Cut Pro for a lower price? I'm assuming that people that have already bought it will get to keep it, but maybe it's going to be Final Cut Pro 11. Maybe that doesn't count. I don't know. Just a thought. And right, let's get into what Macs we're expecting to see at the event. This is a very, very kind of loose thing where I'm trying my best to interpret all of the rumours that we've seen and do my best to kind of logically go through them, but there is very little information beyond the first Apple Silicon Macs. Most likely 12-inch MacBook or 13-inch MacBook Air, maybe something. I don't know whether they're gonna which name they're gonna use, but it's going to be the thin and light. It's going to have an A14 in it. It's probably going to have about 8 gigs of RAM. I don't think you're going to get many options to upgrade RAM. I don't think you're going to be like, which version of the processor do you want, and then which RAM do you want, and then which storage. It's going to be processor, storage. It's going to be very much like getting an iPad. And to that point, we might also get the option of, do you want a 5G chip in it so that you can also do mobile computing? Now, the 5G option not only will give you the option of mobile computing, but it might also mean that Verizon 5G, Verizon can offer payment plans on it. So you might be able to subscribe to your Mac, essentially, in the same way that, I don't know if it's the case still in the US, but certainly in the UK, most people don't buy a phone outright. They pay normally a 2-year contract with their phone, which covers their service and their phone purchase all in one payment, I guess. So that could be an option with Macs. Don't know if that's going to be a thing, but it could be. And also 15 to 20 hours of battery life is what's been rumoured. I think that's probably pretty feasible with Apple Silicon based on how good the chips are and how much bigger the batteries are going to be compared to an iPad. Next up, we could have a 13-inch MacBook Pro, the smaller one, hopefully with an A14X chip. Now, we looked at the numbers that Luke Miani had run, and he was expecting them to be about 40% faster than the A14, which is still beastly. Just the A14 on its own just annihilates a lot of stuff. The A14X would be in kind of i9 territory. I don't think anyone would have any problems with the performance in a small pro-level MacBook. That will probably come with more RAM, maybe 16 gigabytes, a touch bar with Touch ID included. There could be Touch ID actually in the lower end MacBook as well. I think they will have some sort of biometric in it. 5G option again, and 15 to 20 hours of battery life. I think that's going to be across the board pretty much for Apple's mobile computers. Then this one, a little bit less likely I think, but this is the one that I've been talking about the most probably because I find the idea of it to be really, really compelling. A Mac Mini and then potentially a Mac Mini Pro, so an A14 8GB version and an A14X 16GB version. Low price point on the Mac Mini. Mac Mini Pro, that could have the $899 price point that the existing Mac Mini has, and then the Mac Mini nothing, or Mac Mini SE potentially would be the cheaper option at maybe $499. That gives Apple a really good entry point for people who want to get their first Mac, especially now it's more like an iPhone for people that have used iPhones and iPads in the past. I think it would also have all USB-C connectivity or USB-C shaped connectivity, whether that ends up being a Thunderbolt 3 or a USB 4 or a Thunderbolt 4 or whatever it ends up being. I think USB 4 makes the most sense for the vast majority of people. Maybe just the Pro stuff gets Thunderbolt 4. I don't know. And then the iPad Pro. I definitely think we're going to be seeing this at the event. I know it's not Apple Silicon as such in terms of an Apple Silicon Mac, but all of this stuff uses the same processors, and I think if they want to announce the A14X chip, they will probably throw it at an iPad Pro as well, especially seeing as the iPad Air is pretty much as powerful as the current iPad Pro, which comes in at a higher price point. Yes, it does have extra options, like you've got your ProMotion display, you've got the extra cameras, you've got higher starting storage, things like that. This is still really compelling at the moment, and I think Apple really wants to show off what they can do in the iPad range at the same time as the Macs. Again, probably going to have the 5G cellular included in that option, and let's get Verizon back in. Come on, tell us more about how fast 5G is, because 5G and 5G. And then outside chance, this is probably 25% maybe chance of this happening, but I would love to see an Apple Silicon iMac at the event. The 24-inch that replaces the 21.5-inch that we currently have, which is the kind of lower-end iMac. I think that is a possibility. Face ID included. Please, come on. We've already seen that it is included in some of the early builds of Big Sur, and whether that's for internal testing and it just sort of slipped out, or because they really needed it to be there straight away from day one. It would be great if Face ID has come into it. But maybe there's a way where, rather than having Face ID built into the Macs, if you've got your iPhone with you, you can use Face ID on your iPhone to unlock it, very much like we have the Watch to unlock your Mac as it is. If you don't happen to have an Apple Watch, maybe you could use Face ID on your phone to unlock your Mac, if it's close enough. That could be something that U1 powers, potentially. The iMacs will be coming, it looks like, with an A14T chip. Whether that is the final name for it or a development name, we do not know, but A14T is the one that's most likely to have more power. T maybe for turbo, maybe for turbot, maybe for turnip, maybe A14 tornado cores, perhaps, I don't know. That's what we're hoping to see it come with. The 24-inch display, I would think, is going to be at least 4K, could be 5K in a 24-inch, maybe. I think they will reserve a 6K display for the 30-inch iMac, which we expect to be the next level up from that. I don't think they would be putting any kind of cellular into this, but one thing that we have discussed in the past, and I think might be a good option for Apple, would be to put into their desktop Macs a battery of some sort, not just to keep the clock going when it's turned off and all the stuff that we normally get, but a lithium polymer type battery that's kept at maybe 70% charge, so it's not overcharged, it's not empty. They're not kind of trying to fill it up so that it degrades the battery, but something that can sit there and be basically an uninterruptible power supply, and if you get a power failure, it is there and it's powerful enough to save all of your work and shut the computer down properly. Not something that's going to keep your Mac running for the rest of the day, but something that could just give it that kind of backup so that you're not ever going to lose any work. Apple is really good at saving stuff in the background and saving constantly, but just to give you that peace of mind that everything's safe. Now, we are not expecting to see anything AirPods related at this event. We're not expecting to see an updated HomePod regular or a middle-sized one or anything like that. We're not expecting to see the AirPods Studios, although there are rumours floating around at the moment about a 1TB iPhone. Could well be the 13 that they're talking about when we get no ports and all the rest of it. But that's just what's happening right now. So what do you think? Which Macs would you be super excited to see at this event? Do you think they'll actually mention Intel chips at all? Do you think there will be anything new with Intel released at the November event? I can't see them doing it because it will just confuse the whole thing, because they're going to be talking about Intel and going, oh, here's our new Intel MacBook Pro. And by the way, Intel's really slow. Here's our Apple Silicon stuff. You should buy this instead. Like, it's going to be such a mixed message if they do that, but they might. But I really hope they don't. Last thing, Notification Squad. One new member today, William Grundy. Thank you so much for joining. If you want a shout out at the end of one of our future videos, all you need to do, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and let me know in the comments that you've done it. That way I can give you a shout out in a future show to say thank you. Also, any questions for me? Hashtag iCaveAnswers. That's the way to get a question asked on the show, and I can answer it for you. We also get really good responses from the group in the chat, so you might as well ask it there. You'll get a quick response there, and I might give you a more in-depth one on the show. I try to answer as many as I can. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace. I'm not MKBHD.